Hi guys, I am going to attempt to show you how to run the regressions. I have Murat's file, Eviews file, and I'm going to try to demonstrate what you need to do with his file. So as you see in here, he has the companies, he has a grouped sheet that he has the real effective exchange rates in it. If you open that up, you should we see this. So these are the real exchange rates that we're going to use to estimate the exposure coefficients. And we do have also the company returns and also the world market return. Market return is right in here. Market index is reported in here alone. And then he has all the company returns listed in here. So the first thing that we need to do, if you remember, the market index has the impact of the exchange rate. So we need to first orthogonalize the market index with respect to the exchange rate. So we are going to run a regression on the exchange rate of the market index. In this particular case, we are going to do this for US real exchange rate. So we are using the global market index. So we are going to take the global market index and orthogonalize it with respect to the US real effective exchange rate. So in order to do that, I will create a new object where we can actually run a regression, an equation. So I'm launching an equation in here. So in this box, I can actually run that regression. So the dependent variable that I'm going to use in this case is the market index. So market index, it just shows up in here. I'll just pick it up right in here. So this is our dependent variable. Before we enter the independent variable, we need to enter the constant. If I skip this step, there is not going to be an intercept in the regression. So but I would like to have an intercept in here. So I enter C. My independent variable is the US real effective exchange rate. So it is US BIS XPRS right in here, just came up. So I'm going to first run this regression. And from here, I'm going to pick up the residual and then use that residual as the market index when I run the regression of a particular American company against the exchange rate and market index. So first step is to run this regression. My dependent variable is the market index. Independent variable is the US dollars real exchange rate. So I can actually do a few things in here to refine this regression. So I'm going to run least squares regression, but I will use a few options in here. The covariance method, just to improve it a little bit, I'm going to use New West in here. I will let the Eviews take care of the degrees of freedom adjustment. And I'm not going to assign any weights in here and run this regression. So now I have this regression in here where my dependent variable is market index and independent variable is the real effective exchange rate of US dollars. As you see in here, the US real effective exchange rate of the US dollar is quite significant. This p-value is close to 0. This means that this variable in here is significant. That is, there is almost zero chance that this could be equal to 0. So there is modest R square in here, 12%, but these are all expected. My next move is going to be to create a residual series in here. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on procedure and proc in just this menu bar. And I'm going to mark make residual series. So what this is going to do is to pick up the residuals from this regression and create a residual series. So when I click on this, it will ask me how to name it. Let's call this orth index, orthogonalized index. I will click OK. And now I have this series that I have in here. I can visually evaluate this actually by looking at the graph. So it looks more or less moving like the index itself. So there is nothing really significant in here. So I'll close this. And also, maybe I should save this. Let's name this equation, or let's say regression 1. Let's see if it's going to accept it. Yes, it's been recorded as regression 1. So I'm going to close this and go again and create another object. Now another equation. So this time I'm going to pick up an American component. Let's say we use Apple or Ford. I think that is F is Ford. Let's use F. And a constant, and then we're going to use now orthogonalized market index. It should just come up in here. So this is our market index in the regression, and I will have also the real effective exchange rate of US dollar right in here. US EIS, it should be right in here. I got this. And now I'm going to run this regression. Again, I can do still the same trick on the covariance to improve the quality of the regression a little bit. So I have this regression now. Now my dependent variable is Ford. Ford is regressed against simultaneously to market index and the US real effective exchange rate. So the coefficient is negative, and it is significant at the 5% level. So it is okay, and my regression R squared is about 36%. So what I get out of this is that the Ford has actually negative exposure to real effective exchange rate of the US dollar. You could just think about this and try to interpret this. But this is my first actual result that I can use. So I'm going to take this coefficient, actually this whole line, and copy this in an Excel sheet so that I can actually collect all of my variables, or all of my coefficient exposure coefficients into one sheet. Let's use this in here, and I'm going to copy it in here. So this is for Ford. This is the variable. This is my coefficient, exposure coefficient. The second indicator in there, let's look at what it was. That's the standard error, t-statistic and probabilities. So let's copy those as well. Oops. Exposure coefficient, this is standard error. This is t-stat. And this is my p-value. So this is the case for Ford. Let's run another regression, and I'll write this as, let's name this as Ford. Save it, and then move on to the next regression. So I'll turn this off, go to the next regression. And let's say this time we do Apple. Again, we are going to use the orthogonalized index. This is the global market index. And then we're going to use the US BIS to show up in here again, and then run this regression with small adjustment in the thing. And then now we do have this time Apple again has a negative exposure. This is more significant than the previous one. So I'm going to copy this line in here. Actually, I don't even need this one. Let's get rid of this one. So this is Apple. And I have my exposure coefficient. Oops, I think I moved way too fast. So I didn't copy actually what I wanted to do. So let's clear this and go back and really copy what we need to copy. So I had to say yes to this so that I can have the right stuff. Now, unfortunately, it is going to also have that variable. Let's cut that off and put it in here. So this one, clear this one. So now I have the coefficient for Apple. As you see, Apple and Ford coefficients are not too far from each other, but standard errors are different. So we can statistically interpret this. Obviously, the confidence interval for this one is a little bit narrower than this one. So we can think about statistical interpretation of these, but the procedure is the estimation of each of these coefficients one by one until you finish all 30 of them, and then you're going to have actually all of these exposure coefficients, and then you can try to interpret what these mean. Obviously, most of the multinational firms, as Apple and Ford shows in here, will have negative exposures. Maybe you will find some companies that would have positive exposure. You could also compare US multinationals exposures with other European or Japanese multinationals exposures and see if there are any qualitative or quantitative differences between those. So this is the procedure that you're going to follow. I have the feeling that you did not do the regressions right. Maybe some of you were getting errors because of that. And I noticed that in Murad's file, there was also an error. So this is the process that you need to follow. Unfortunately, you will have to do this one by one until you figure out how to automate this process by programming Eviews, okay? So I will stop this and send it to you, and I hope you can use this to finish your work. All right, have a good night. Bye-bye.